You know what this means. It's a brand new build, and this one's a from scratch 24 scale SCX24 based. So this is going to be built around Injora, Treal, and Furitek parts. Starting with this aluminum rock bouncer chassis that is very affordable versus the hot racing. And with that, I ordered some more Injora parts. I'm going to try out these Super Swamper tires from them. I've got some brass diffs that come with bearings and 2 different weights for front and rear. And then I've got their brass knuckles as well for the front. I'm going to use these black Power Hobby wheels that I had. I had pulled these off another rig a while back. I've got these V1 Treal hex extender weights, and then I've got a rear aluminum diff mount or link mount, and then a spur gear. Got some no-name axle inners, Injora overdrive, Mofo RC black label servo and aluminum mount, and this is an NZ Hobbies red aluminum servo horn with a clamp style. Let's see, Treal Jeep and deadbolt links. I'm going to mix and match those to get a stretch. Treal boulder bars to try out. This other red over here is all Injora. These are the 42 or 43 millimeter telescoping shocks. These are their links and trans-skid. This is not Injora, this is off of eBay, no name, full metal gears, housing, comes with a pinion, bearings, everything. Good value on that. And then the rest of the stuff you see here is all the Furitek electronics and the FlySky FSBS6 receiver there. I'm going to use the Komodo motor with their optional 15 tooth pinion here, and I'm trying out their aluminum red motor mount, which matches nicely with this scheme. And then we'll have a Lizard running it, and then there's a BEC if I can fit it or need it. And then what you don't see here, I'm going to pull from my parts boxes here. So I finally broke down and combined, all my spare parts. So I've got axles here, and I've got my rear diff gears, bearings. So I'll pull that, and then I don't think I will need anything else. I've got hardware if I need it. Tires galore, some wheels. Too much stuff. I need to build more. So anyways, I'm going to get started on this, and hopefully this should be a one-shot deal like the Warthog build. Look at that. Some pretty axles. So I got these bad boys assembled. Wait a minute, that's not a red servo horn. So that was the first revelation. The servo horn fits the smaller little gear that comes on the stock SCX24s. So it fits the stock servo, but it doesn't fit like an Emax or this black label that have those larger brass gears. So, something to note there. The second revelation was, of course, the front drive cups. Let's see if I can get this to focus. They're not as deep as stock, and they're square. So I just had a bunch of stock ends, so I used stock instead of taking the time to Dremel these out. Not a big deal. I've got tons of those stock ends. So anyways, that's the front axles. So I guess maybe moving to the transmission pan and motor assembly. Alright, one other thing I forgot I wanted to touch on was the drive shafts. I ended up ordering a set of deadbolt metal drive shafts and a JLU set as well, to get the rear and the rear thought for sure out of all of those odds and ends of plastic pieces I would have the drive shaft combos I needed, but turns out I didn't. And I was going to pick up just some more sets of axial drive shafts, and I started looking at those, and with shipping those are about $10 a pop. So these being 16 a piece for metal, you know, that's only a couple, you know, $10 more to get metal, since I would have had to order 2 sets of those axial drive shafts. So I'll put a link to those. Hopefully these work out well. You know, just basically any brand from China axles. I don't know if the bag's dirty or these have a little grease on them, but we'll see. We'll dig into it. Okay, just wanted to do a quick look here at what's coming next. Of course, I've got the drive shafts out. Those 2 longer ones on top will be the ones I'm using. Those feel really weighty, and of course they've got really long inner shafts, so they should have a lot of travel, so no problem with, you know, extended travel shocks or anything like that. Then of course I got this nice metal assembly here, really smooth, nice shielded bearings. So I'm going to ditch the motor plate and the spur gear for the hot racing spur gear. And then it comes with a metal pinion. We're going to use this 15 tooth from Furitek. And then this is my first look at this aluminum motor plate with the carbon fiber piece here. Actually, you know, anodized, and then it's got this nice, just raw strip of aluminum. But I mean, this thing is, it weighs nothing. Super lightweight. Then of course, the beautiful Komodo is going in this. So a lot of red here in this stage to add to it. So I'm gonna get to this little assembly bit here, and then we'll move on, I guess, to the links and the frame. All right, you're looking at the completed assembly here. This is beautiful. This motor mount is really kind of interesting. You have to remove this carbon fiber plate. That's just a spur gear cover. So you remove the plate, and then you can mount the motor mount, then put the plate back on, and then put the motor on last. And there's the 15 tooth pinion, and it's got a little wiggle with that spur. That's what you want there. A little bit of play in the mesh. And then had a little issue trying to get this guy seated into the trans skid. I just backed off the bottom bolts of the transmission case to kind of loosen that, the 2 halves apart. And then I took a Dremel and chamfered that little peg edge. You can see a little silver there, just to help it seat down. And then you can access those 2 screws after the fact to snug them back up. And then, you know, the 3 mounting ones went in fine. So, you know, just had to stop and take a second and get it fitted. But I think it's just probably lower quality machining on this housing. The skid looks fairly nice. So all in all, this is up and running and functioning. So we'll see how this 15 tooth Furitek optional pinion does. So now I think it's time to move on to take a look at getting some things actually mounted up to these 2 halves and building a vehicle. Alright, back with a little update here. This is kind of the last bits and pieces before we get to the electronics. So I've got this chassis out, and I'll just say it is really small once you mock that motor in there. That chassis is tiny. And of course I've got my Treal Jeep and deadbolt, so I'm going to run the deadbolts in the front. Then I've got my Injora shocks with the soft springs ready to build up there. And then this is all the hardware and bars, I guess spacers. No instructions here, so I'm assuming the little brass bushing spacers are for the shocks on the sides. And then the posts, there's, you know, 4 posts with holes. 2 of those had larger holes, and this plate has countersunk spots, so easy to deduce these 4 screws. They were the only ones that are countersunk. And then there was also 4 really short screws, so that was easy to deduce. They go through these so they don't poke through. But everything else, we'll just see as we go what we need. I don't even know if that battery tray will fit in its current state, or even cut in half, I don't know. So anyways, gonna jump right in here. Look at that, looks like a buggy. So this chassis went together really easily. I didn't get all of the braces in. I've got 3 still to use. I just backed up the shocks with nuts rather than screwing them into those braces. I used my own spacers at the rear, and I doubled up the little brass ones they gave you on the front to get these shocks perfectly vertical. I was getting a lot of rough kind of binding, and that's pretty typical with these telescoping. They want to be they don't want to be angled or anything as far as the extension. So another little piece of advice there is I took out all the O-rings on the exterior side with the bigger flange. I left them on the interior, but that allows these to stay straight when the axle rotates. You can see the shock has plenty of room at that axle connection to stay straight, and you can see that through piece is angled like the axle. So those O-rings just put too much pressure on these telescoping. So you can see they're really smooth now. I've got these soft shocks in there. Added the boulder bars for a little lower CG. These are really neat. The first time I've used them, they've got 3 slots, so they're adjustable. You can go center, back, and I've got them all the way forward, which I kind of like that little protrusion to the front on this buggy. I'm really liking this little spoiler lip too. And then the servo wire, you can see here, I wrapped up and then I slid in another bar to kind of pin it and screwed that in. So I may take that off and loosen it a hair. You just got to make sure you've got enough droop that you're not hanging on your servo wire, that's still got a little slack. I think I need a hair more, but the big issue is the drive shaft on the front, and I kind of forgot about that. When you flip the links from the rear to the front, you can see the rear diff, that upper link bolt, it's basically behind the pumpkin edge or over it. And on the servo mount, you know, it's way to the rear of that pumpkin. It's not over the diff at all. So it throws the geometry a little bit out of whack. Also, the transmission is not perfectly centered, so when you flip the rear to the front, or you turn this whole transmission around, you change the links just a hair. So that was enough to change the links to give me a little bit of drive shaft bind here, so I can't get full compression. You can see I'm hitting, it's apart, and then I hit right there, and so you can see I'm not all the way down. And then the rear, because this is rear Jeep, there's no issue, it works as intended. So I ordered another set of these metal shafts for the JLU C10, so I'm going to use the rear female shaft, this one, for this front deadbolt piece here. And then I'm going to leave this male 20mm inner, and this Jeep inner is only a 10mm, so this will be 10mm shorter, so I'll have 10mm exposed, but I'm still going to have 10mm engagement. So it ought to be just the same. I'll just see more of that inner shaft exposed, but it'll give me full compression. But other than that, hooked it up, centered everything, you know, tested it. Works fine except for the compression on the front. Looks like the receiver can go sideways right here, double-sided to the bottom of the tray. I'm going to double-side the lizard to the bottom, and then I'll be able to slide the battery in and out on the top. So just waiting on that shaft to get in. I'll swap that in and then I'll get my electronics in, and this is going to look a lot tidier, I think, than I thought. And if they ever come out with that V2 Pro Lizard, I don't think it has these soldered. I think it has a plug, so you could get rid of this piece and just plug your motor into it. So that would be a big space saver. But I still think just this thing is so tiny, it's not going to be an issue. It's stuck to the bottom. So a little bit more to go. All right, got my new drive shaft in. I've got full compression. Look at that. So nice. So this is what I was talking about having to do. So that's that Jeep rear female outer shaft and the deadbolt rear male inner shaft on the front. So you can see now I've got full compression. And then one other thing I did was I went ahead and put a +4 outer axle on the front only to widen the track, because this thing is so long that with the narrower track in the rear, it's going to help the turning radius a little bit. And then also, if I weigh it and I ended up wanting to add a little more weight, I can put on the little axle patty weights on the front. But this thing is ready for electronics. Wow, that was so easy. I was even able to fit in the little Furitek BEC. So I don't know why I was so worried. Look at that. You can't even hardly see anything. So everything got double-sided to the bottom of the battery tray, and then I just slid that in and mounted it. So you can see the receiver is sideways, double-sided up. Then the BEC is double-sided to the end of the receiver right there. Then you can see the Lizard is double-sided right here, and then everything plugs into the receiver. And then this BEC is actually kind of nice because it gives you a battery extension. So otherwise you would have had to fish the battery cable and try to plug in under here, which is next to impossible. So this is the hookup right here. Just slide this in. I don't have any Velcro or anything. And you just tuck the cable under here and then just tuck that one under there. That battery's not going anywhere. So I ended up adding some spacer bars. I put one here under the receiver after the fact. I added one under here as well. Under that Lizard and all the wires. So none of these wires are tie wrapped or anything, they're just kind of routed in and amongst themselves. So anyways, came out great. I need to weigh it, and I've got one little bit more to do if I can find a piece at the hobby shop. And one other tweak I made was I ended up having to pull those outer axles on the front and Dremel down the drive cup slots about 1 millimeter. I was getting a little binding at full lock, but now I'm smooth. So everything seems to be operating well. So I'm really curious about these tires. So I think I'm going to run up to the hobby shop, see if I can find a little surprise piece, and maybe test it a little on their course. And let me get it on the scales real quick and see where we ended up. All right, here's the weigh-in. Looks like we're at a 54-46 front ratio. Let's toss in this battery. I'm sure this won't help. Yeah, so we lost a little So we could use maybe some front axle patty weights that might help get that ratio back forward. But yeah, 52, 48, 417 grams. $14.6 ounces. So that may change a little when I add this part, if I can find it, so stay tuned. All right, the hobby shop was a success. I found the part I wanted, and I had a nice little test run up there to try out these tires and just see initial performance. And that leads me to maybe looking at some front shock repositioning or some limiting straps potentially, and I think I'm gonna definitely get some front axle patty weights to bring a little more forward bias. But this is the new part that I wanted to get for this guy. So it's a little light bar array for the roof. It's got some fairly chunky wiring, you know, for this scale. So we'll see about how that will fit. I've got some LEDs here from Evan LEDs or Evan Designs that I usually get them from. And you can see here, these are much, this is a 4 LED array wired into one, but super small wires. But the only thing is, there's such a long length of the 4 wires before they tie together. I'd have to take up a lot of this slack up to this point. And then of course I can cut as needed and solder on a plug. So we'll just have to see. You know, of course the rack can go on there easily, 2 screws, and then I'll take a look at wiring the lights. Could always run it with no lights and just keep it simple. We'll just see how much of a headache it may be. Well, that was a bust. Or was it? I called an audible. And I mounted these upside down on the Jeep bumper. I just like the way it looked better. They're going to be protected if it rolls over. They're not going to get smashed. I was able to use their lights. So I just, you know, you can see I just took a reamer and popped a couple holes and then screwed this up into that. So this bumper's upside down. Then I had the bumper off and just routed the wire down under and then up, and then took tweezers to actually plug it into the port in there. And then I just took the bumper and twisted it 2 or 3 times to kind of wrap all these wires up. And those are just kind of hanging below the motor. They don't move, so they're not going to hit that rotating outer piece of the motor. So all the clearances look good. They just disappear on full compression behind the servo. But yeah, pretty happy with it. I don't like doing anything the normal way. So I might see about putting in the Jeep lights into the bumper. I don't know though, because on those you will see a ton of the wire back of the LED because this bumper is upside down. So it just may not look that great. But I really like this look right here. Another reason I didn't put them on top is, I don't know if you can tell, but if you look at those front bolts, they kind of lean forward. They kind of bolt through where the roof bends on the front and the back. So really, if you mount the light bar right there, it's going to lean kind of down. It won't sit flat on the roof, I don't think. I didn't try it, but just eyeballing these bolts, they're so angled forward. And anyways, I really like it up front. It's more kind of rally style. So anyways, now maybe I can get it out and do a proper test run with it.